And I'm going to read it and ask for your approval or action on it. Resolution of the Board of Education of Howard County. Whereas on July 11, 2014, a Howard County Public School System student and his parent filed a complaint of sexual harassment against Board of Education member Cynthia Valancourt. Whereas after investigation, the school system's Title IX coordinator concluded that Ms. Valancourt had violated Board of Education Policy 1020, sexual harassment, by making a sexually offensive comment to a male student that was unwelcomed and inappropriate. Whereas individual members of the Board of Education are responsible for conducting themselves in a professional manner at all times in adherence to the same board policies that apply to all school system employees, and as public representatives of the community and of the school system must be held to the highest standards of conduct and leadership in fostering an environment within the Howard County Public School System community in which sexual harassment or sexually offensive conduct in any form is not tolerated. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education expresses its disappointment in and displeasure with Ms. Valancourt's conduct that led to the investigators' finding that she violated the Board of Education's sexual harassment policy, and expects that Ms. Valancourt will seek counseling and training to guide her future contacts with Howard County Public School students. The Board would welcome Ms. Valancourt's acceptance of responsibility and the recommendation for counseling, and stands prepared to support her efforts in this regard. And I move acceptance of this resolution.
Second.
Discussion. Yes, Ms. Valancourt.
Well, in the words of Ronald Reagan, there you go again. Did you all know that the giant at Hickory Ridge has been carding young people who try to buy condoms? I learned about this early this summer and immediately contacted Dr. Maura Rossman at the Department of Public Health, who confirmed not only that there is no legal age requirement to purchase condoms, but that she agreed that this was an alarming practice that could have terrible consequences on teen health. We both contacted Giant, and after several weeks of efforts, I am assured that this is no longer happening. If anyone in the audience is offended by this brief discussion of the public health aspects of teen access to condoms, an issue which is part of our curriculum here at Howard County Public School Systems and about which our community spends significant amounts of money to educate teens, I would apologize and suggest that you would not be well suited to a position on the Board of Education. I walked in here this evening with no notice that this resolution would be read or what it contained, and did not have a response prepared. The resolution refers to a complaint that I have never even been allowed to see. All I know is that it relates to a brief conversation about Giant carding young people to buy condoms, as I described earlier, during the dinner break of a Board of Education meeting among many people who have actively sought to be actively involved in public policy decisions. As a young woman in the workforce in the 1980s, I experienced actual sexual harassment, and I can say unequivocally that sexual harassment is a heinous crime and must not be tolerated. It is such an important issue that to cheapen the horrid experiences of millions of women and men is equally offensive to me. The real trauma experienced by these individuals should not be minimized by frivolous claims of personal offense. I have had to deal with contact an attorney who's been representing me. He has written a letter to Mrs. Rebecca Salerno, who is in the Office of Equity Assurance, and all of the board members were copied. The letter reads, "This office represents Mrs. Cynthia Valancourt. I have been provided a copy of a letter to her dated from you dated August 12, 2014. The letter refers to a purported allegation of sexual harassment of a male student. The letter states, among other things, that Ms. Valancourt admitted to making a purportedly sexual harassing statement. Ms. Valancourt vehemently denies that she engaged in any conduct that reasonably could be construed as constituting sexual behavior, whether by the definition you set forth in your letter or by any other common sense interpretation. Ms. Valancourt's only admission was that as a publicly elected board member, She raised an issue of constituent concern and a general discussion among several persons. As both an elected official and concerned citizen, she is constitutionally privileged to do so. Your characterization of such a comment to be a violation of Howard County Public School System Policy 1020 as sexual harassment is arbitrary, capricious, and contrary to common sense. With the general election nearing, any dissemination, publication, or communication of your personal conclusion will be deemed an attempt to discredit Ms. Valancourt and thereby interfere with the election process. Although she has no desire to embarrass any individual or group, Ms. Valancourt will respond with all available legal remedies if her rights are violated. If, for whatever reason, you elect to pursue this claim, we request that you provide a copy of any alleged written complaint or summary of any alleged oral complaint in order that fundamental due process can be followed and Ms. Valancourt may properly respond. To date, I have not been able to see this supposed complaint, whether it's in writing or was it taken as an oral complaint, I don't know. I have asked for it. I have asked for it through a lawyer, and I have had no response. As you all know, I am running for re-election. We have had many forums, and a question inevitably comes up about contentious relationships on the board. Last night at the League of Women Voters Forum, I responded that I don't consider dissent to be contentious. And when it comes to votes on issues, I have not experienced my choices to vote against various issues as being contentious. Well, I'm not sure it gets any more contentious than to have a Howard County family and an extremely important policy and the office which is entrusted to fairly administer Title IX and equity assurance manipulated in such a scurrilous way. You might ask, why would anyone ask for another term on a board where people are treated this way? I think it is precisely to get me to either give up and resign or, failing that, to impact the election that this absurd action is being taken. My answer is that if I can be treated like this as your elected representative, imagine how an employee could be treated. I will continue to stand up to this bullying, not just for myself, but for the thousands of employees who are dedicating their lives to this school system. If any other employees have been treated this way by the school system or the Equity Assurance Office, please let me know. Character assassination, intimidation, and bullying is not leadership. Our employees deserve better, our community deserves better, and I deserve better. I would say shame on you, but you all are clearly shameless. As for condoms for teens, I hope our teens will make good choices. But in case they don't, I don't think they should have to pay for it with their lives. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to respond to several of those pieces. One is that the complaint was filed in accordance with the Howard County Public School System policy, appropriately with the office. The investigation was conducted by that office. The only connection we have to any of this is that the report was copied to the finding was reported to the board at the same time. We are obliged by Policy 2000 and by the handbook to police our own and follow up on any allegations of this sort, and the board met with you and council to discuss what the alternates were, and you were present, and you replied that there would be no response until you had an attorney write one. The attorney's response was that you had done nothing and that you would hold to that, and there would be no acknowledgement of responsibility in this action, and no acknowledgement that the conversation you undertook in a session that was not a public board meeting, which means it was not an appropriate place to discuss policy, because when we have a quorum of board members present, we do not do that, because the idea then is that we
Public policy is not the same thing as board policy. A discussion about public policy about condoms is not
appropriate dinner conversation, especially with young men who are under the age of adulthood and are present and were embarrassed by what you said and disturbed enough to take that allegation to their parents, who filed action. And so,
I believe I should
Mrs.
get to see
Valancourt,
this action, this complaint
you
that
have
was
the
filed.
same rights that every other
Then
member within the system
why
has.
do I not have it?
Because everybody doesn't have a right to see actions that are filed by minors, regardless of where that happens.
Everybody has a right to see the complaints that are filed against them.
Madam Chair, can we call the question?
Yes. Would anybody else like to say anything? No, Mr. Michaels?
Sure. What it comes down to is accountability. And whatever the remark was made, whether or not that was perceived as offensive, as we found with the recent Glenelg High School Confederate flag incident, things that you may not think are offensive can be found offensive. What it comes down to is accountability, and we need to make sure that any action that someone takes, there's always a reaction, and you need to address that accordingly. Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Siddiqui, you move the question? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All abstaining?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0-1. And now, Mrs. Hanks, we can go back to the budget.